On Wonderful Wednesday, we are in the end of August. And
Unbelievable.
at the end of August, I'll tell you, time just flies. It
Yeah,
flies.
yeah, it actually rained here last night,
Yeah?
and my wife was thrilled. Now the streets were a little damp this morning, and it was dry, and maybe like 65, but it was like you could feel that kind of fall coming. I mean, it'll be back in the 80s again pretty soon, right? But it was kind of nice to get that. That's the first time in like 70 days we've gotten anything measurable. It's funny how you just forget that it rains. We get
Yeah.
some great summers, you start forgetting.
Well, we had some rolling thunder through here last night,
Uh-huh.
and we didn't get any rain. We had some big drops, just a few fell, but really
Mhm,
we didn't get anything here. But not far away, it was
mhm.
pouring.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I went a few days ago, well, Sunday, I guess it was on Sunday, went
Mhm.
over to Enterprise. They had gotten 3 inches of rain in 1 hour.
Wow.
That's that's a downpour.
Yeah.
That had to do with the tropical storm,
Uh-huh.
that was a hit down in California. Well, it
Mhm,
turned into a tropical storm up here,
mhm,
and it was just from that system that
mhm,
hit California, the hurricane that hit down there, Mexico mostly.
mhm.
Hey, you know what? We're not getting what we're getting in over on the East Coast right now with the Dahlia, and
That is true.
yeah, but it is
Mhm,
a little bit of fall in the air, just a little
yes.
with the cool
Yes, it
down.
is. And
Yeah.
fall arguably is the most beautiful time of year in the Northwest. Arguably.
Yeah, it is really pretty, but I will tell you where I live,
Mhm.
spring. It's so
Yeah.
green and so many shades of green.
Right,
But
right.
the
Yeah,
fall, I love the fall colors. I
yeah,
do. I
yeah,
do.
absolutely.
Well, speaking of fall, well, Mitch McConnell didn't fall, but Mitch McConnell froze up for the second time.
What a segue.
And
That was smooth.
he is, and it's sad to see, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And personally, I think he should step down. And
Mhm.
he was having an interview today, and the reporter said, so, hey, Mitch, are you going to be running for reelection in 2024?
Mhm.
And it was so sad to see, the deer in the headlights look. You have to be compassionate to our fellow,
Mhm.
human beings and Americans, but just human beings,
Mhm.
that it's time for Mitch McConnell. He is a very powerful man and been around a long time. You might even say a little bit of the problem of what we have going on in our nation, but it's time for him to
Well,
resign, quite frankly.
yeah, and here's the problem. It's indicative of a lot of things, but there's multiple. You could layer away. There's multiple problems here, but you hate to have a mandatory retirement age. It's not everybody that gets a certain age. We don't age the same. Let's put it that way.
No.
There's some people who are super energetic. They're in their 80s and 90s, in phenomenal health and doing all kinds of things. And then there's those who decline, like
Yeah.
precipitously. Like in their 50s and 60s, they start going to decline. So I don't think a mandatory retirement age is the issue. We're not talking, this is not like we're flying airplanes where it just makes sense to do that sort of thing. Because we could really benefit from the wisdom that people have. Whether we agree with McConnell's policies or not is not that has nothing to do with this
Yeah.
discussion. But when your health is clearly failing, what is it about power that's so tough to let go of? You look at the people like, gosh, you got Pelosi, you've got what's her name in California also,
Diane
Feinstein.
Diane
Yep,
Feinstein.
Boxer probably falls in the same bucket though. He's going to line, not to mention, well, I don't even want to call him the president, but the guy who's sitting at the Oval Office, who's not the president, him, the guy was elected to the Senate in Pennsylvania, who's
Oh
not
yeah.
very old, but clearly his health is not even
Yeah.
there. And these people just can't let go of power. I mean, you almost wonder if there shouldn't be some kind of a mental fitness test that you
There
have to.
should be a cognizant test,
Mhm,
because if you don't have the mental capacity for the job that you're in,
mhm.
you shouldn't be, especially it is affecting America,
Yeah, for
right?
jobs, yeah, of that nature, I think that's probably the best way to do it. We've tried term limits and all. I mean, these things just don't seem to work out. But an objective cognitive test would be would be a great way to go. Um,
Yeah, I think so. So it's sad to see. And I think Dianne Feinstein is another one that is um, past her prime and needs
yeah.
should resign. And and I will say the same thing of Biden. This is getting to where it's elder abuse
Mhm.
when a person can't put two sentences together, and they should not be in the position that they're in,
And
because clearly somebody else is running Biden, which means they're running our country, and that's not who was a I hate to say elected, and I don't think he was
he wasn't.
rightfully
Yeah.
elected by any
Well,
means.
well, can you think of a time in American history when we've had this many people who were mentally deficient? And I don't mean that as an insult, but I mean, just aren't there in office at the same time. And I remember in history books and back in middle school and high school, what a big deal they made out of Woodrow Wilson being incapacitated and
Yeah,
essentially his wife running things. And that was like a huge deal. And now we got a whole fleet of people like Woodrow Wilson.
we
Um,
do. We do. And that's
like,
scary, quite frankly.
yeah, it
But
really
like you
is.
said, it's the power. And like Fetterman, as Lori mentioned, Fetterman, he never should have been elected, quite frankly.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, right. Well, he was another one. People knew going into the thing he wasn't there. So
yeah, yeah,
Pennsylvania can only blame Pennsylvanians for that one,
yeah.
assuming that it wasn't a cheat.
Assuming. Well, listen, we do have some potential really good news if this can get through legislature. Lori Chavez DeRemer has introduced legislation that would kill Oregon tolling permanently. And I think this is a really good thing. So she introduced this on Tuesday, a bill that would ban the use of federal funding and prohibit the U.S. Department of Transportation from approving tolling projects on Interstate 5 and Interstate 205 in Oregon. The bill has been dubbed the No Tolls on Oregon Roads Act. Very good.
Mhm.
And, so she says, I quote, Oregonians are understandably fed up with the state's attempt to hastily implement tolling, and I want to give drivers peace of mind by making the current pause permanent, end quote.
Mhm.
And, ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation, has been putting plans to put tolls for a long time on the highways, also Abernathy and and the Tualatin River bridges to pay for improvements. But Tina Kotek has halted the tolling program from starting until 2026.
Mhm.
Well, I'll tell you, I haven't met one person that wants the tolling at all on I-5 and 205, across bridges that you're forced to go across in order to get from one side of the river to another. I haven't met one person that wants this. And we have gas tax to help pay for roads, and yet the governor has cut the what is going to come from those gas fuel taxes in order to cut the budget from what's going to be going to roads, which makes no sense. Where's that going? Bicycle lanes, walking lanes,
Yeah.
sidewalks?
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Well, I tell you, I'm not intrinsically against tolling in general. If I thought that the money to be raised from it was going to be actually used to increase the efficiency of the transportation system. But the left has taught me one thing for sure, and that's like to trust nothing they're saying. And so I know that's not what it's going to be used for. For that reason, I mean, and in fact, what it is going to be used for is to trap people in their 15-minute city. That's the whole purpose, to make it really expensive and really difficult for Portlanders and Oregonians in general to move around. That is the only reason for it, to make the cost of gas so high, the cost of transportation so high that you get stuck and forced under the criminal transportation system, which they call public transit. And then they can control your movement. At any given drop of the hat, they can just say, you have to stay home because of the next virus we've introduced to you that they've made up. And then they just like shut the system down. And guess what? You're not going anywhere. That is the true reason for all of this that no one will say.
Yes, and I agree with that. And apparently, K2 spoke with Rory Biloski. I probably slaughtered that name, the mayor of West Lynn, back in May. And he said for his community, the biggest issue is the potential for traffic to divert off the freeway and onto residential streets. And you bet that would be a happen,
It will
where
turn
if
residential neighborhoods into a nightmare.
yes, yes. And another quote from Chavez, Lori Chavez de Remer, is as a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee's Highways and Transit Subcommittee, I'll continue working closely with my colleagues to put a stop to this unfair interstate tax. So you know what? I end quote. That is really good. I hope and pray that passes. I really do.
Yeah, that is about the only way to stop them because constantly trying to get around the citizens to vote on these things. Put it to a vote, then sell the citizens on your idea. If you can
Right.
sell them, then you'll get it. And if you can't, you can't. But they know they can't win, as with everything that Democrats do. So they're always trying to do some backdoor scam to get their way. And this is another example of that.
There is, and there's a petition out there. It's IP4 that is to put it on the ballot for people to be able to vote whether for the counties that would be affected by the toll roads. And if you have not if vote before tolls, if you have not signed the petition, look it up, find it, and Google that up in there, and find a place to be on the lookout for and sign the petition, because it should go to a vote of the people that they're going to have to pay this, and it's frankly not going to improve traffic at all.
The strategy is, of course, to if they don't win, they just keep putting it in front of you over and over and over and over again until they do. I mean, that's
yeah, that happens. That's true. Well,
I mean, one last comment on that one. You really can't emphasize enough. How can a city the size of Portland have one east-west freeway? It's abominable. It's one. And that
right.
one doesn't even have a shoulder on the left side. It's crazy. And it's been like that for 40 years. I can't think of a bigger disaster city in the country than Portland. I've been to lots of them. 2 north-south freeways. It's like ridiculous. And a city with bridges, no less. 2 bridges across the Columbia. It's unreal. And the I-5 bridge, was finished in like 1947 or something? And it's a drawbridge to boot. It's
right.
got to be the only interstate drawbridge in the United States. I'd love somebody to look that up. An interstate bridge that is a drawbridge. This means that sailboats literally can cause the thing to go up. It's unreal.
Well, I'll tell you, there's on the East Coast, there's lots of drawbridges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you have the intercoastal waterway,
mm-hmm.
and highways crossing that. So that they're on the East Coast, and I've been under a lot of them. I've gone up and through the intercoastal waterway, and so that might be interstate highways over there as well.
Yeah, I'd be very curious.
But I don't know.
The major arterial north to south in the United States on the West Coast is I-5. I don't know if you can think of another one. I think it's I-55 in the center of the country, for example, that takes you from St. Paul all the way down to New Orleans. I mean, I'd be very interested.
Yeah, I don't know. And like across the Mississippi River, we've got some big rivers in our country.
Right.
And if there's drawbridges, on that, I don't know.
I mean, think about the disruption to the economy when that happens. I'm talking about truckers, for example, right? What they have to put up with, not to mention the regular citizen.
But it doesn't last long.
Yeah.
And in fact, when we were in our sailboat on the Intracoastal Waterway, there was two bridges, if I remember correctly, two bridges. We had to have an appointment.
Hmm.
You couldn't just
Oh,
show up. You always had to
right.
call the bridge and ask,
Hmm.
to let them know that, you want to go through.
Hmm.
And sometimes you just had to drop the hook and
Hmm.
wait. And they said, okay, we're going to do the drawbridge at this time. We said, okay, we'll be ready. So
Right.
it wasn't just like on a whim, but it
Right.
doesn't,
Yeah.
but it does, you're right. It does stop traffic. It's a
Yeah.
hassle.
But
And
for a major city, I
yes,
mean, it's like, and
yeah,
the bridges don't have shoulders. I mean, if anything happens on that bridge, it's
right.
over.
Right, and if it
It's
gets
over.
stuck in the up position, it's
Yeah,
really bad.
it's
What if it broke
over.
there,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. Well, did you happen to see the interview with Tucker Carlson was talking with Trump? Did you see any of that?
I saw the whole thing. I did watch it.
Well, he mentioned that to Trump, and Trump did not even acknowledge it. But, he says it might be that the next thing is they're going to try to assassinate you,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that's a real big deal. And so on the Citizen Free Press was actually talking about this, that Tucker Carlson, could believe that President Trump's life is in danger, and where he says we are speeding towards assassination. Obviously, they've decided there's something about Trump that's so threatening to them that they just can't have it. Well, what's so threatening to them is they see the writing on the wall. They know that Trump will, the people, it's clear to me, Don, the people want Trump. They and they might not like him for personality, but it's the result of what he did for America. And he has done so much to wake up people. In his term, he brought out, I mean, he was saying fake news when nobody believed there was fake news, or very few people believed there was fake news.
Yeah.
And just he's brought so many things to light that I believe has woke up a lot of Americans to the reality of the corruption in our country. And now it's as things accelerated through COVID, the control of the media, the control of everything, the censorship in so many areas. And I believe that's what they're afraid of, is what he is showing to the people, not just in America, but quite frankly, the world.
Yeah, I don't think I'm talking about the Western world now, not just the United States, but the ruling elite in the West. And I'm talking about not just the government, but the heads of corporation, big media, the whole educational system, higher education, the whole 9 yards. I don't think any of us knew how evil and corrupt they were. I don't think the general population is where the evil elite that run the country are. I mean, they tried to foist CRT, Black Lives Matter, gender identity. People that hate blacks hate white people.
ESG.
They have pumped all of this stuff so hard, and it feels like it literally came out of nowhere. But in fact, it couldn't have come out of nowhere. I mean, that they've been plotting and planning that and working on that for years. And Trump was the first one to really call BS on it. And the reaction, what's that old Shakespearean adage? She doth protest too loudly, right? And the
Yeah.
fact that they're screaming so loud tells you something. I mean, if he's so atrocious, why are you? He should lose on its own merit then, if he's that atrocious. You've had the entire media apparatus attacking this guy for what, 8 years now or something like that, and you still can't take him down. You've tried to like throw him in prison. You've had all kinds of impeachment processions and that are like ridiculous on the surface of them, and all it's done is make him more popular. So the assassination thing, you have to wonder why haven't they done it yet? I think they would rather discredit them than assassinate him, because you assassinate him, you make him into a martyr. So I think that's the only reason that that hasn't happened. Um,
I'm sure
nothing else.
there's been attempts on him, that we would never know about. I
Sure.
don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and and lots of presidents have attempts, but I mean, organized attempts by the people in power themselves, sort of a
Hmm.
thing. I sort of think they've been asked by whoever's running this stuff to not do it yet. Um, and the other thing you ask is, why is he doing this? He could walk away from this. I mean, the guy's got plenty of money, which is the other thing you look at. It doesn't make sense, for someone like him to be doing this unless it was for a true belief in a cause. And I admire him for that. I mean, he didn't have to do this.
No, he definitely didn't have to do it, but it takes somebody that is not owned by the donors, the various donors or organizations or companies. It takes an independent uh, person, financial independent person, to be able to be truthful and to follow their conviction, not kowtowing and doing the bidding of whoever is their donor. And so, and that's where he has that. And his book is really interesting. His book, Letters to Trump, if
Hmm.
you've not seen that,
I've
it
not.
is very interesting because so many people that were, friends
Hmm.
of Trump and wrote letters to him and appreciated him for who he is
Hmm.
before he ran for president, absolutely turned their back when he announced
Hmm.
and said, no, no, now that's not acceptable for you to do that. So it's quite interesting.
Well, there's no question these people are being paid or pressured, in some way, shape, or form. Nothing really explains it other than that. Um, it
Yeah.
seems rather obvious to me.
Yes, I think so too. I think so too. Hey,
Mhm.
well, listen, we're going to leave the United States now and in our next story and go to Africa
But unlike
because,
leftists, we're coming back.
yeah, yeah, we are coming back. But this story I found quite interesting because, there's lots that our media doesn't tell us. And so what has happened is a military coup has happened in Gabon in Africa. And it's on the coast. I had to, look at a map and see where this is. And it's on would be the Atlantic coast, right right where it gets fat, and the top of Africa gets fat out there.
Mhm.
But anyhow, so Gabon officers declare a military coup, and President Ali Bongo has been detained. Well, they had just had elections, and a family member of Ali had won election. Well, the Bongo's family has ruled for 56 years. The junta names General Bryce Oligi Numa as the leader, and Bongo has, from house arrest, appeals for support, and France has troops in Gabon and condemns the coup. So this is an oil producing country, and they have seized power on Wednesday. It took them about a month, apparently, to do this, from what I have read. And they have named a new leader. So it says that they've placed President Ali Bongo under house arrest and naming a new leader after the Central African state's election body announced Bongo had won a third term. And so this group is representing the armed forces. The officer declared on television that the election results were canceled, the borders are closed, and state institutions are dissolved after a tense vote that was set to extend the Bongo's families more than half a century in power. And so apparently within hours, the generals met to discuss, the generals of their military, who would lead the transition and agreed by unanimous vote to appoint General Bryce Numa, former head of the Presidential Guard, according to another televised address. So they have made him to be the leader. And this is interesting. So hundreds of people celebrated, and I watched on social media actually people dancing in the street at the being happy that the family that has reigned over Gabon has been taken down. So, but this is the eighth military takeover in West and Central Africa since 2020. So that's in 3 years. And it's the second after Niger in as many months. So military officers have also seized power in Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Chad.
Mm-hmm.
And erasing democratic gains, it says, this Reuters article, since the 1990s, and raising fear among foreign powers that have strategic interests in the region. Well, I don't know. So
it makes one wonder. I mean, these are things that you wouldn't have wondered about 5 years ago, but you have to wonder about them now. Were those things organic to just those countries, or is there meddling by the CIA or Western European powers to do this? I don't have any evidence to say that, other than we know what's happened in other places.
right. And so I wondered the very same thing. I wondered about is this who's behind this?
Hmm.
And this is an oil producing country. And I know China is wanting to do more in Africa. Is it have to do with them? I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
And this article doesn't give any information as to that.
Now,
But
what did you say? You said the A. What did the AP say? Because
oh yeah,
whatever the AP said, the opposite's true.
yes, yeah, and I don't have that article up anymore, unfortunately, on the from the AP, and because the AP was actually their take was just about opposite of this Reuters one. That was interesting. So apparently, Gabon produces about 200,000 barrels of oil a day,
So you
and
can bet your bottom
mainly,
dollar it has something to do with that.
yes, and international companies, including France. Let's see, international companies, including France and Anglo-French producer Perenco.
Hmm.
Concerns about the weekend elections transparency were raised by a lack of international observers, the suspension of some foreign broadcasts, and a decision to cut internet service and impose a nighttime curfew after the vote. Bongo's team rejected allegations of fraud. And so, shortly before the coup announcement, the election authority declared Bongo had the election winner with 64.27% of the vote, and said his main challenger, Albert Osa, had secured 30.77%.
Yeah. So
So,
you have to step back and think, and I don't know the answers to this, but I have no opinion, right? But you have to immediately wonder who wins and who loses, who stands to gain from this sort of thing, and then you'll start to begin who's pulling what strings. Is there a military strategic value here? I mean, when you're talking military, oil is always going to be a strategic asset. Is there geographic military benefit associated with this? And I haven't looked at the map to see where these places lie in terms of international choke points for shipping, that sort of thing, right?
right.
So those are the kinds of things that you have to think about. Is there some mineral outside of oil?
Manganese.
Yeah, yeah.
It has large manganese operations, and that the French mine. So this
Mhm,
is this could very well be a former French colony.
mhm. Right.
And I don't know. I don't know the history of this country at all.
Hmm.
And but the French were there mining. They've stopped the mining right now, and we'll just have to see. But I find it interesting that this is the eighth nation
Hmm.
that has had a military coup in 3 years.
Yeah, just say one ought to have the jaundiced eye about anything like this when it comes to the behavior of our governments.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll have to see. But I wanted to bring that up. There's stuff that goes on around the world
Hmm.
that our news media doesn't touch upon, and there's going to be
Hmm.
repercussions of that. We'll see what it is and what's led to the other nations.
Hmm.
This is the eighth one.
Hmm. Oh, and I had to just mention, I saw a blurb on this. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But Tucker Carlson has apparently been engaged in conversations with Putin's people to actually interview him. Can you imagine the ramifications of that? And of course, the media is losing its mind, or the government's losing its mind over the possibility of that happening. I mean, there's evidence that the CIA is investigating Tucker Carlson now because he's potentially talking to Putin people. But there's nothing wrong with that. Historical reporters have done that all the time. Why would we not want to hear directly from the source? Let's see what the man has to defend himself. Could it be that we're afraid of what he might, or I should say us? Could it be that our ruling elite are afraid of what Putin's going to say? Hmm.
Could very well be. Could very well be.
They,
And
they
I
hide his speeches as it is. We never hear
pardon?
speeches. We hide his speeches. Our media
Oh
hide
yeah.
his
Oh
speeches.
yeah.
They never tell us what he's saying. They tell us what they want us to hear about him.
That's true. That's true. And it's interesting when the lead up to this invasion of Ukraine, I was thinking, why aren't we just stopping this before it ever starts? Why are, not that it's our job, but America has been, from my viewpoint, America has been the peacekeeper around the world. And we've never, we've anyway, there's lots of discussion on that could happen on that.
Mhm.
But when, as the lead up to this invasion, I thought, why are we not stopping this? We could so easily stop this.
Yeah.
And but it's by design. And so then I had conversations with people that said, you know what? It's Russia trying to stop the corruption of the Ukraine, and the Americans don't want that stopped. Or no, it's not. It's the Russians. I had other conversations. Well, no, the Russians live in Ukraine, and the Russia's just going to take that territory back.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Ultimately, it's about this. We had the Monroe Doctrine, and the Monroe Doctrine essentially states that we're going to let large powers come into the Western Hemisphere and dictate what happens here. Russia also has a Monroe Doctrine, and they're not going to let large powers come into their sphere of influence and do that. And they told us that there's no way that that Ukraine is going in NATO. I, unless you want to have a nuclear war over it. And I don't see American citizens being very interested in sending their boys and girls over to Ukraine to die on their soil for a battle that is impossible to win. It's like crazy. And I don't know if you caught this, but I think it was Tucker Carlson interviewed Pence and asked a specific question around, and he thought it was a legitimate question. Why are we spending all this money on Ukraine when we've got industrial accidents in Ohio? We got fires in Hawaii. We got people living in the streets in the major cities in the country. We're not doing anything to fix it. We got people running across the border like mad. We're not doing anything to fix those problems. His answer was something like that. That's not as important. We're spending, at least the guy was honest. We're spending billions of dollars on a situation that we can't influence and can't win, even if it was the right thing to do, which I don't think it is. Um, when we got problems right here at home.
oh, we do. Yes, yes, we do. Yes, we do. Hey, listen, something else I wanted to talk about. There is, let me see. This is on PJ Media. I'm going to tell you I have not fully read this article, but I want to I liked the headline for sure. And it's PJ Media. And the headline is 1,600 scientists humiliate the climate ghouls once and for all.
Ooh.
And I think our audience would kind of like that as well. And so they're talking, about for it says, as you may have read from our own Paula Bouliard, the pinkos at Big Tech, specifically the one that rhymes with Boogle, are actively demonetizing we the people at PJ Media. There are likely certain words and phrases their algorithms seek out, so they know which stories to slap down. So I'm going to replace the phrase it's climate with another moniker, Storm and Norman. Okay, instead of our the world's changing, right? Weather changing. It's Storm and Norman. After, and the example is after successfully assassinating brown paper grocery bags, the brain dead greenie meanies now believe plastic bags cause Storm and Norman. Well, a bunch of scientists have come together and they've said, you know what? This is Storm and Norman just isn't happening. And so, but you've got people that are just going, no way, this is, and they're of course indoctrinating people, more kids in school, all about Storm and Norman. I like this Storm and Norman deal. And because Lord knows our own program has been really throttled down because of what we've had, and we've gotten spanked for it. But the report starts with the proposition in which everyone with an ounce of gray matter will agree scientists should study science and the politicians should stay out of it. Right? I mean, that's it. So apparently, though, a bunch of scientists have come out, and the Geological Archive reveals that Storm and Norman has varied as long as the planet has existed, with natural cold and warm phases. The Little Ice Age ended as recently as 1850. Therefore, it's no surprise that we are now experiencing a period of warming. Let's follow the science.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing, clearly they're using it in order to shut down the West, or to be more specific, the United States. It's 100% what it's about. I mean, if they were really interested, if we really, let's just step back for a minute and let's say climate change, man-made climate change, let's put it that way. Let's say that it was real. If it was real, who are the countries that are producing the most pollution that would cause that to happen? Well, it's clearly China and Russia. I mean,
India, too.
and India. The West has come a huge ways in terms of reducing carbon emissions and those kinds of things. It's so it's not about fixing the problem that we can't fix anyway for the reasons you just described. It's natural. I mean, if you read back to the time when Dickens was here, London, for example, was a lot rainier and wetter then than it is now, and it's cycled. If you go back 300 or 400 years before that, you read from what people wrote then, the climate was warmer. It's cycles. It's completely natural.
It is completely natural, and it's gotten to the point now. I saw something on social media that I think Bill Gates said, let's cut down the trees and bury them. That will sequester the carbon.
I'm not.
You know?
I'm no scientist, but that doesn't register.
No, it doesn't register, and trees are not the problem. In fact, trees produce oxygen, which is
That's
what
what
we
we were
need.
taught,
We need
right?
trees. We need plants on Earth in order to keep breathing oxygen, right? And it is so a bunch of scientists, though, got together because they are calling out the fact that they're now truly going after agriculture all over the world. And you know what? If there's no farming, there is no food. And
Well, of course, that's the end game. Is the deep is this cause depopulation? Um, and anyone who's followed Gates for any amount of time, you have to at least be suspicious of that.
oh, 100%, 100%. And so just check out that little article there. And it's something to, I'm like hearing that more scientists, real scientists, are coming out and going, you know what, enough of this. This is not real science. There's nothing to back this up. This is modeling. This is computer modeling that has generated this. And if you put garbage in the model, you'll get garbage out the model. You want to have a poll, tell us what you want, and they'll give you the exact, they'll come up with the poll to give you the results that you're wishing for. It's that easy.
Well, what's more encouraging, I think, in all of this is how I'll call it small media, like channels like this, these small papers and publications and media are winning the battle. More and more Americans are ignoring big media because it's just because they just lie.
Yeah.
And more people are looking around with their own eyes and seeing that it's just false. It doesn't make sense. The preponderance of Americans still do think. Certainly, outside of the central cities, they think. But there's a lot of people inside the cities that think. I mean, even places like Portland, where where the Democrats win, they're not winning 100%. I mean, those races are getting closer and closer. So you get beat over the head with a reality stick long enough, eventually you start seeing the light. So there's a lot of positive things I think happening across the country. It's easy for us to get pummeled with negative news all the time, but there's a lot of things that are indicative of people seeing the light. For example, Target continuing to get pummeled in terms of sales. Disney World just getting annihilated, both in terms of its attendance at parks as well as its movies and that sort. Anheuser-Busch absolutely in the toilet and continuing to be so. So those are huge positives that show the people that, and these aren't necessarily conservative people. These people are just common sense who said enough is enough.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so on a positive side, here you have in Colorado Springs, a middle schooler, Jaden, who got taken by his teacher over to the principal's office because he had a little Gadsden flag patch on his backpack. He had other patches on his backpack too. And his teacher said, you know what, you can't be in class for this. Well, I'll tell you, that got, thank goodness, he's 12 years old, and he was exercising his First Amendment right at school. And it didn't look like, I saw a picture of his whole backpack, and it didn't look like it had just gotten put on there. It looked like it's been on there a while. And but the good news is, so he had he was told that he had to remove that flag patch from his backpack when school officials ordered him to. And his mother secretly recorded her meeting with the school officials and in Colorado Springs, and that told her Jaden isn't allowed to wear the symbol of the American Revolution because of its origins in slavery. That's a crock of bull. So this ridiculous and false assertion was made by a sour-faced woman, the school's director, who glared at Jaden as she admonished his mother. Well,
so
the good news is, then it goes on to say, the reason we do not want the flag displayed is due to its origins with slavery and the slave trade, she said. While gesticulating wildly, as if her hand movements would hide the absurd drivel coming out of her mouth, Jaden's mother responded, "The Gadsden flag?" And the administrator responded affirmatively, vigorously, nodding and repeating, "The don't tread on me." Well, after that conversation, it clearly made its way to social media, and they went to somebody in the media who would actually cover this. Thank God. And now, actually, the school district has come out against this school and the teacher and the administrator and said, oh no, he gets to keep that on his backpack. That is part of his
Yeah.
First Amendment right.
See, that's the sort of thing that's got to happen across the country because they've been secretly selling this stuff for a long time. This reminds me of a story. If you'll give me a second to kind of give you this personal story that occurred to me. So probably about 2005 or six, my son when he was small, we'd always fly an American flag in front of our house, but we'd also fly the Gadsden flag. And the neighbor kid down the street, she's probably around 10, 12. She approaches me. And remember, this is a 10, 12-year-old kid approaching a grown man and starts trying to lecture me about the Gadsden flag. And, I wasn't in the frame of mind that I am now. But it occurred to me later, I did explain, I didn't give her a great explanation, but I did. Um, where did she learn that? I mean, number one, to learn something so wrong and stupid, but maybe even more important, that you just were born yesterday, and you're going to approach somebody 5 times their age and try to tell them, what time it is. There's like an arrogance that the left pushes through the school system from the grade school all the way up through elementary and college and makes these people think that they're smarter than everybody else who lived before them, that they know more than the last 5,000 years of human existence. And I began to notice that then. I've seen it with some other folks, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where these people get out of college from these left-wing nutcase universities and start talking down to their parents. I saw this with a relative who went to a school to be unnamed, a small private school in the Bay Area. And the way that she talked down to her parents, who grew up in the South, doing this sharecropper thing, busting their butt to pay her way to go to this like outrageously expensive, overpriced liberal university, and now she's going to talk down to them. I was wow,
Yeah.
and that was like 30 or 40 years ago.
Wow.
Um, you know, um, what can you say? People better start paying attention to where they're sending their kids to school. Number one, and number two, they better grow a spine and start putting these people back in their place. I mean, you're 15 minutes old. You're telling somebody 60 years old what to think. Are you out of your mind? A previous generation, that old Daffy Duck cartoon where his wife slaps his face off. I'll slap your face clean off.
Back when children were seen and not heard.
Yes, exactly. You don't know anything at least until you're 30. Um,
Yeah, so I'll tell you one of the funny parts on this as well is DC Drano had posted on Twitter a picture, or at least he picked it up. He's a picture of Jaden after he was kicked out of school. That he, shortly after being kicked out of school for standing his ground, Jaden took a photo standing next to a teacher's car in the parking lot that is covered in bumper stickers of a political nature, including one that says, "Don't mess with trans kids." So it appears the rules that apply to patriotic kids are and not radical lefty teachers.
yeah,
And
oh yeah. So you can't fly the flag of one of the only two countries on earth, the only country to fight a war over slavery, a country that fleeted slaves, a country that stopped the slave trade, a country that caused the slave trade to be illegal. When no other country besides Great Britain in the world did it. Two Judeo-Christian countries, I might add. This is the kind of response that needs to come back at them. So, is that what you want? We ought to be damn proud of the United States.
yeah, definitely. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad that the school, they ended up called an emergency meeting, the district did, and they issued a statement, and they kind of issued one statement and then they sort of ate that one and issued it back and said now they've changed their whole tune about the Gadsden flag. But he
Well,
had
that's
other
good.
patches on there, Saint Michael
Mhm.
and the archangel who carries a
Oh,
sword. And
I'm amazed they didn't get him for that too.
well, they said that they wanted him to remove that because it could, and for actually forcing him to remove the image of Saint Michael could be seen as religious persecution. But it
Mhm.
appears the school has made him remove the patron saint of police officers. However, now they've changed their tune about the Gadsden flag. So,
I thought the patron saint of police officers was that guy who got killed in Minneapolis.
yeah, Yeah, so it's go Jaden. We need more Jadens, and the parents being their own
Mhm.
journalist, that his mom recorded that conversation.
Well, and say the reality of anybody should be restricted from having any kind of a badge or any kind of political identification marker should be the employees of the school, the teachers. You should not be allowed to have anything. You're supposed to be like, completely fair and balanced is the word I'm looking for. But they shouldn't even know. When I was in school, I had no idea what party my teachers belonged to.
Right, right,
Just teach.
right.
Your
Just
job is
teach.
not.
The
Your
reading,
job is
writing,
not
and arithmetic. Let's help produce
right.
good, productive citizens of our country that know how to balance a checkbook and know the work ethic. I mean,
Yeah, that should be explicit.
yeah,
You don't promote either party. You don't promote anything.
I
And if
agree.
you do, you're fired. I mean, as far as public schools go, um, actually, public schools should be eliminated. But I know I stand alone on that one.
Yeah, I would say be a Jaden, you know,
Be a J.
be a Jaden. So that's a good note to end on. And thank you everybody for watching us. Spread the message and just, be a Jaden.
Always enjoy my wonderful Wednesdays with you all here. Thank you all for coming again. And Sunny is always a blast. And everybody take care.
Good night.